My first memory hearing the term backing tracks or lip syncing was over 20 years ago when Ashlee Simpson had what her Wikipedia calls the Saturday Night Live incident. Now, if you aren't familiar with this, it went a little bit like this. Jude Law introduces her and the band, and the camera pans to the band and Ashlee on stage, and they're playing the intro to her song Autobiography, but it's super slow and it feels really weird and empty. And then, suddenly, with Ashlee nowhere near the microphone, you hear pre-recorded vocals singing a song that they performed earlier in the night called Pieces of Me. Now, the drummer just kind of keeps trucking on through it, and the band kind of slowly stops and then adjusts and starts to play Pieces of Me so that they can match the backing track. And at this point, it's fairly obvious that someone hit play on the wrong backing tracks, but the band is doing an admirable job trying to salvage it. But Ashlee, she's not only not singing into the mic at all, but to make matters worse, as the pre-recorded backing track vocal starts to fade, she just kind of does a jig. And then as the band arrives to the chorus in full force, again, with no lead vocal at all, no Ashlee singing and no backing track pre-recorded vocal, Ashlee just walks off stage, earning her spot in a very exclusive group of musicians that have just bailed on a taping of SNL. And to top it all off, at the curtain call at the end of the episode, she says this.
What can I say? Live TV.
Exactly. I feel so bad my band started playing the wrong song, and I know what to do, so I thought I'd do a hoedown.
Thus, music listeners all over the world were exposed to backing tracks and lip syncing, and, well, they hated it. And I think it's because a situation like this kind of crosses this, unspoken barrier where, as an audience member, we expect what we see on stage to be what's coming out of the PA speakers. But when something happens to breach this trust, it feels like, as an audience member, like you were lied to. Like you were made a fool because of this bait and switch between, what you saw on stage and then what actually hit your eardrums out of the speakers. I think transparency goes a long way in music. People make mistakes live, people fire the wrong tracks, guitars are out of tune. And I think musicians have this instinct to, in the moment, kind of try to adjust and put on this perfect front. And I think I look back at a lot of performances I was at, and the imperfections were actually like my favorite part of some of the performances I was at. I think whether it's backing tracks or lip syncing or someone, having a malfunction on stage, I think the only time it gets weird is when, musicians won't acknowledge that this stuff is happening. So today I want to talk about backing tracks and the myths that I've encountered in my career dealing with backing tracks or lip syncing. 1, 2, 1, 2. When I say backing tracks, I mean any pre-recorded audio that a band or an artist is using to enhance their live performance. And backing tracks can be as simple as just a click track that only the band hears, that helps the band, play at the same tempo every night, which can help, sync up with lighting cues or pyrotechnics or lasers or videos or whatever else they have in their production. Backing tracks can also have a lot of other stuff in them, from, additional keyboard parts that the one person on stage can't cover, to, guitars and synths and other stuff that were on the record that you can't bring on the road with you that really serve to fill out the arrangement, to, everything and anything, including the lead vocal. And I think there's a ton of validity to thinking backing tracks are bad or wrong. Because honestly, I think it's easier to set up backing tracks to kind of be bad than it is to set them up well in a way that enhances the performance. Now, everyone can and is going to have a differing opinion on this, so put yours below in the comment. But for me personally, I think ideally backing tracks enhance and supplement a show in a way that is kind of more felt than heard. It's one of those things that, when they're happening, you don't necessarily know what's going on, but if someone were to take them away or mute them, you'd then go, oh, wow, it just doesn't feel as exciting or as full. I think ideally that's what backing tracks are doing. The truth is, though, whether you like it or not, backing tracks are here to stay and they're not going anywhere. And there are several reasons for this. Like, touring budgets are really tight right now, so having tracks on stage means you can bring instrumentation from the album that you just simply can't afford to have on stage with you night after night. Backing tracks help provide consistency from front of house, and a well-built backing track session can not only run backing tracks, but it can run the light show, it can run lyrics, it can run video, it can do all of this from a laptop on stage, which saves you a ton of money night after night, not having to hire personnel for each separate corporate job. Now, I live in Nashville and I get called all the time to go tour on the road with artists. And when I can't do it, the people I consider subbing for me all have experience and all know how to run and build backing tracks. And that's because 90 or 95% of gigs these days require some amount of knowledge about backing tracks, whether it's just running a click or it's doing a whole deal with, video and backing tracks and the whole shebang. So to be honest, if you avoid and have an opinion that, backing tracks are just terrible and whatever, you're entitled to that opinion, but you're hurting yourself because you're limiting the amount of work that you can get, whether you're a drummer or not, honestly. Everybody should know a little bit about backing tracks, and that's why we're talking about it today. And I know that there are a lot of ways that you can run backing tracks, but the industry standard at this point is Ableton. So today I'm going to talk about backing tracks in reference to how you could, build a great backing track session in Ableton, because that's kind of the industry standard. And I also think Ableton is uniquely qualified to be amazing at running backing tracks. Tip number one for building backing tracks that don't suck is, build backing tracks that allow for flexibility. So in Ableton, there are two views that you can use to build backing tracks. One is session view, which you're looking at here, and the other is arrangement view, which is what I use the majority of the time. And the beauty of session view is it's really easy to just kind of load in tracks really quickly and you're off to the races. But the downside with session view in Ableton and with a lot of other ways, like running on SPDSX or, running tracks just off an iPod or Logic Pro, is once you, kind of load stuff in, it's cool, it plays audio, great, but you're kind of locked in to starting at the beginning of the tracks, running to the end. And it doesn't really allow for flexibility. Like if you want to loop a certain section so that the singer can talk over it, or if, you want to double a section, you can do all of that in Ableton, just not in session view. And it's really hard to do that kind of stuff on an SPDSX and some of the other ways that I've talked about running backing tracks on this channel. So I really love arrangement view, and this is what arrangement view looks like. So here in arrangement view, I have two songs loaded up. The first one is Born Wild. The second one is Wings of the Dawn. And you can see that in both of these songs, I have a bunch of these markers here that are all labeled for what section it is. So when we're rehearsing, it's really nice because if someone says, hey, can we go from the first chorus of Wings of the Dawn? I can say, yeah, I can click here, zoom in, hit play, and we'll be a bar before the chorus. It's just that easy to find it. And when you're in session view, when you're on an SPDSX, if someone wants to start in the middle of a song, it's really, really hard. But the other thing that these markers allow for is you can, if you are at the beginning of this song, and let's say that the singer wants to talk over this intro, you can play this intro and it will play and it will play and it will play. And as it comes to the end of this loop, you'll see it goes back to the previous marker. So we're just stuck in this loop until the singer is done talking. And then once they're done talking, I can go ahead and advance to the next section. And now we're on to the verse. So it allows, having tracks that allow this kind of flexibility, that allow this kind of great workflow where you can kind of make anything happen. You can edit these tracks in a rehearsal if you're there. If someone says, hey, let's shorten this by 4 bars or whatever, I don't have to do this complicated process of, waiting until I get back home in the studio to edit it and then load it back on the SPDSX or something like that. I can do it right here. If someone says, hey, let's nix these 4 bars that are down at the beginning, I can say, okay, cool. Command-Shift-Delete. Now they're gone. And I don't have to worry about, I don't have to remember to do it. It's just done. So I think one of the huge mistakes that people make when they're running backing tracks is they're really locked in because they're not super comfortable with whatever software or whatever, machine is running the tracks. And the machine doesn't allow flexibility. So it just starts to feel like this very sterile, we got to hit play and then we got to get to the end of it and no one get off and nothing happen. And I think there's a better way to do it. And Ableton really allows you to do that. And if you're curious about this, I have a ton of other videos on the channel that do a deep dive into this. But right now, I just want to go surface level on how I think we can run backing tracks better to avoid kind of our, Saturday Night Live incident. Tip 2 for building backing tracks that don't suck is using great click track and count sounds. There are a ton of videos on the internet of people playing to, backing tracks at various live shows and churches and things like that. And I think a lot of the click tracks sound bad. And that seems like a small gripe, but it's not. You have to listen to a click track. Everyone on stage has to listen to the click track all night long during every song at every moment. And just kind of having it be this very sterile, wood blocky thing, it's not inspiring. It's grating, it's annoying, and it's going to make everybody on stage go, I hate it when we play with tracks because the click track or whatever. So if you make a click track that's musical, if you make a click track that kind of incorporates, is really easy to hear live, it's one of those really small, overlooked things that, people don't think about, but if you put a little bit of care into it, it's really important. So the stock click track in Ableton, I don't find very good. And even though there's a couple different options, I just build my own click track. And it sounds like this. I really like the sound of that click track because it's got a tambourine at the downbeat. So people that are, like people like vocalists and things that don't have to pay attention to the grid 100%, at least they have that tambourine on beat 1 to kind of establish where that beat 1 is. And then there's some other like wood blocky things in there, but there's also a doubled blippy click track. And I find that there are people that really like analog sounding, like wooden cowbells or wood blocks or whatever. There are people that like those kind of sounds, and there are people that like blippy click tracks. And if you combine the two, you kind of make everybody happy. And it really just has this pleasant roundness to it that I really like. And maybe you don't like it. That's fine. I just think there's a lot of people that use click tracks that don't take into account the type of subdivision that's going to be the easiest. At certain tempos, you might only want quarter notes, but at other tempos, you might want eighth notes. I think you can just pay a little more attention to this. And the other thing that I'll say about, making backing tracks not suck is always have a way to solo your click track instantly. In Arrangement View in Ableton, there are ways that if you get off from the tracks that you can get back on. But there are times where, you're just not going to be able to get back on with the track. And at that point, it's really important to just be able to solo the click track. So at the very least, you will have click track to hold you together. And to do that, I always just set up a key command, S, that if I hit it, it solos the click track. And if I hit it, it unsolos the click track. And in Ableton, the really cool thing is if you hit Command K, anything that's orange right now, you can tweak. And I think it's an amazing feature that Ableton has to, the flexibility you can set up with key commands. I also always have a 2-bar count in when I can, and that provides consistency between songs. No one has to guess how many bars we get before the track starts. It's always 2 bars. And if it's not, it'll be a specific reason. A lot of times it's because one song flows into another and things like that. And on this topic, you can also use alerts. Like a bar before the chorus, you can say chorus, 2, 3, 4. Little alerts like that really help just glue things together. They make it super simple. Maybe someone got distracted while they're on stage because, their wireless belt pack was malfunctioning. So they zoned out for a second to make sure that was okay. And now they're back in it and they're going, oh, shoot, okay. Which bar are we on? When they hear that cue, chorus, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Now I know where we are in the track. So something I get asked about a lot on the topic of backing tracks is how do I hear backing tracks on stage? That actually provides a great segue to the sponsor of today's episode, Allclair. Allclair is a company that has a headquarters right here in Nashville, and they make custom in-ear monitors as well as universal fit in-ear monitors. They have a ton of different options for both, and universal fit in-ears are great because you can pop online, find a model that works best for your needs, and then get them shipped right to you. And you can find a great fit for you by using the provided silicone or foam tips that come with your in-ears. Custom in-ears are just that, custom created to uniquely fit your ears. So you'll order them just like Universal Fit online, or you can go to one of their physical locations. And then you get an impression of your ears done at an audiologist, which is an ear doctor near you. Or if you're local to Nashville, you can get them done right in the lobby of Allclair, like I did. These custom in-ears also block 26 decibels of outside sound, which means I don't have to crank things up as loud to hear them, and I'm not damaging my hearing by what's around me, which is super important. You have to protect your hearing. Because they're custom, they never fall out. They also have just incredible sound quality. Most importantly, Allclair has incredible customer service. And that is super important when you're buying a custom product like this. So if you ever need any help with your in-ears, whether it's before you order them or after, Allclair is going to help in a super quick, super helpful way. And that's because everybody at Allclair are musicians, so they understand how important it is to have support when you're working with a custom product like this. So if you're in the marketplace for in-ears, head to the link in the description and check out Allclair. They're amazing. They also make a ton of other stuff like custom earplugs and a bunch of other stuff to get your ears straight when it comes to music. And tip number 3 for building backing tracks that don't suck is pre-mixing and mastering your tracks. Again, at the beginning of this video, I said ideally backing tracks fill out the sound, add excitement, add fullness to what's on stage. They enhance it, but they don't get in the way of it and they don't fake anything. And that takes some planning. Sometimes when you're building backing tracks, you know, the producer that worked on the song might send you 200 tracks of audio. And you don't want to put all of that in your backing tracks because not only is it going to step on what other people are doing on stage probably, like you don't want 2 lead guitar parts if there's one in the tracks and then you have a lead guitar player. But you're also going to get into that territory of faking it. You really want to take a careful look of, okay, when we're playing as a 3-piece or a 4-piece or a 5-piece, however many people you have on stage, when we're playing, here's how it sounds, and here's what I think it's missing. Maybe it's missing an additional keyboard part just to fill the harmony out a little bit because you only have one guitar player. Or maybe you need some percussion because it'll add just a little bit of momentum in that chorus where every other drum element drops out. There are little decisions like that you just want to take an overall kind of producer mindset to the live performance and go, what are we lacking on stage and what's going to help fill it out without stepping on toes or trying to fake anything? And I get asked a ton about how you get tracks loud enough. And what I really recommend is for every project that you do, take them into whatever DAW you're most comfortable with. If you have Ableton, you can take it into a separate Ableton session, load all the tracks in, and kind of mix them all down to stems. Get yourself a background vocal stem. Get yourself a guitar stem, a keys stem. Basically pre-mix all of it in a separate session and kind of whittle down. Maybe for keyboards, you don't have a keyboard player on the road and there's a couple of key parts that are important. Again, if there's 3 key parts throughout the whole song, instead of loading all 3 of those into the Ableton session, go into a session separate from your backing track session and just kind of mess around with the levels until it feels like one cohesive stem, and then just print that stereo mix and load that in your backing tracks. And that way, you're doing some intentional kind of whittling down of what you don't need and then pre-mixing it so that the levels aren't all over the place. You can also throw a limiter on. I really like the FabFilter L2. You can kind of send each different stem to their own bus and then, mix them. And I aim for trying to get, negative 14 LUFS, LUFS. If that doesn't make sense, just use a limiter, get things kind of loud. And that way, if you want to bring it down, you can. But pre-mixing and deciding that stuff in a different session and then bouncing out stereo mixes of guitar, keys, sub bass, percussion, whatever, it's going to make your life way easier because instead of 200 tracks, you will have done the work to kind of whittle it down and just have in the backing track session stereo stems of kind of each whatever you're trying to fill out on stage. So that was a really quick overview of these specific tips. And if you're looking for a more in-depth dive into backing tracks and how to build them, set them up for your best success on stage, you also have questions about like, how do you book bands? What audio gear should you take to gigs? How do you set up an in-ear rig for your band? How do you negotiate pay, either as a hired gun or as a band being hired by a venue? Those are all topics I cover in my course, Live Gigging for the Working Musician. It's over 11 hours of video footage that talk about, how to learn a bunch of music quickly, talk about negotiating pay, talking about how to know how much to charge, as well as an entire section, an entire module, all on backing tracks. How to build backing tracks in the SPDSX, how to use Ableton for backing tracks, how to, make your own backing tracks, how to make your own drum samples for using live. I go over all of it and more. So if you want more information on that, head to the link in the description. Check out Live Gigging for the Working Musician. It really is all the stuff that I wish I had learned in music school about really working in the real world.